How do you make a big decision, really make it, without spinning in circles, second-guessing yourself, or waiting for the perfect time that never comes?
Most of us were never actually taught how to decide. We were taught how to analyse, compare or plan, but not how to listen, choose and move on our decisions.
Today we're joined by Bethan Winn, one of Australia's leading experts in critical thinking and human skills. She helps people slow down, get clear and make decisions that actually align with who they are and not just what they should do.
We'll talk about why some choices feel impossible while others come easily. Spoiler alert, it's not about your star sign. How to tune into your intuition and why it's not necessarily about making a good decision, but making the decision good. Bethan, thank you so much for coming on the Outlaws podcast and welcome. So tell us a bit about yourself, what you do and your background, how you got to where you are.
I guess I'm a facilitator first and foremost, and newly minted author this year, and occasional.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Sometimes I do sort of big conferences as well. How did I get here? My background was in teaching. I was out of uni. Actually, I was in the not-for-profit sector for a couple of years, and then I thought I need to get a proper job. So I did my teacher training and taught in a high school in London for 3 or 4 years, and
Okay.
I got pretty burnt out and said, surely there's more to life than just working every hour God sends. So we moved to Perth on a bit of a whim 15 years ago to the day we arrived, and we just came to you. I know, yeah, we call it our Perthiversary.
Perthiversary, love it.
You need a little catchy thing, don't you? But yeah, we came with a rucksack and no things other than what we had in those small bags with the intention to stay for a year. And unfortunately for my mother, we kind of liked it. We got pretty settled and we've been here ever since. So the kind of big epiphany came about 6 years ago when I'd been teaching here for 9 years at that point. And I thought, I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what.
So what were you teaching? What was your background? So you said you studied and then you were in the not-for-profit sector. So I'm just keen to dig into a bit of that.
Well, many aeons ago, it was English and related literature. And that, with lots of volunteer work, took me into the not-for-profit sector.
Okay, yeah.
First job was at Oxfam. So I'm still very passionate about that area.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
But that kind of realization that I want to save the world is not going to happen. So, I'm going to save a small part of it by helping and teaching. But as I moved through my career, I was head of media for a while in London, which has actually always been useful as a skill, how to edit videos, how to put a nicely designed flyer together. And then I was asked, after I came back from having my children, I was asked to write a course on critical thinking for mature students. So I was with university age students by the time I sort of finished up teaching formally. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can write a course on critical thinking. How hard can that be? And I quickly realized that there's a lot more to it. The sort of a Dunning-Kruger effect, as you might be aware of, that beginner's confidence was there. But I just fell in love with it. I was like, this is so helpful for me as an individual making decisions, and for friends and family that I was talking to about this stuff. And then some of them working in HR were like, can you take this to businesses? And I was like, I don't know much about business, but I can try, and learned very quickly, as you do. And the rest is history. So post-COVID, the last 5 years, I've been doing workshops for corporate, government, professional services, schools, you name it, all over the shop.
We talk a lot on this podcast about decision making. I think often when people are trying to make hard decisions in life or in careers and they're faced with decisions, often it's quite difficult for people. And some people are really great at making decisions and make really quick decisions, and other people take a really long time. My mum is particularly bad. She takes forever to make any kind of decision. It drives me almost mental.
I do not want to derail. However, I'm not a very good decision maker.
Okay.
And I've always put it down to being a Libran, because Librans are, I'm only half joking, Librans are supposed to be indecisive. And there's a lot of confirmation bias going on with my good friend Teresa. Shout out to Teresa if you're listening, who's also a Libran, who is also a terrible decision maker. And we just put it all down to our star sign. Now, Shayla is also a Libran. and is very decisive. So that blew my little astrological theory out of the water. So we can probably put that to bed straight out, but it is not connected to stars. Excellent.
Yes. I've seen multiple studies where people, they want it to be true, but it's not.
It's
I'm afraid.
really not.
But, it's a story that you tell yourself. And I'm always really curious about the stories that we tell ourselves, because that's how we perceive the world and ourselves. So, if it's a helpful story and you enjoy it and it's useful for you, keep your story. And
good.
There's worse stories you could have, right? But I like that Shayla's sort of evidence makes you question your story a little bit.
It's not connected to the time, the date of birth. That's that's reassuring. But yes, okay. Well, and then it's just something I struggle with completely. Decision making.
And my question is, why is it that some people are so great at decision making and some people are not great at decision making?
Well, interesting you said that, a fast decision is a good decision, because that's not necessarily the case. I suppose we're saying why some people faster and some people are slower, because slow doesn't mean it's bad, right? And sometimes if it's a big decision, like, leaving teaching, it took me quite a long time to get there. And I knew that I wanted to do it at some point. And then it just took, often with career changes, I know you probably talked about this, but something that stuck in my mind years ago is the 4 Ds. I think it's death, displacement, disease, and divorce. Like there's often like a big life quake that comes along that makes you reassess everything. That was definitely the case for me. I was lucky it was just a breast cancer scare, but very long getting my results back. But in that week, I felt like everything just got thrown up in the air and I was like, right, this is something I've been meaning to do for a while. Let's bloody do it,
Yeah.
So with the why do some people take longer, it can be one of a million reasons. And some of that will be very much sort of situational, because you might be great at picking off a menu, but shocking at, I don't know, deciding about relationships, for example. Whereas some of it will be to do with your risk averseness. And it's very interesting and to talk to people about that, like how much information do you need to be certain of to move forward? Some people are like, I need 120%, and others are like, 10% of the information's fine. And you're like, oh, okay.
It's a really interesting idea, isn't it? About what is a good decision maker? Actually, that could, how do we even measure that? I haven't thought about that before. Kate, I mean, you say you're a bad decision maker. Why do you think you're bad?
Well, it's interesting. And listening to you, Bethan, then I was thinking that in actual fact, it's small decisions I struggle with, whereas big decisions I can. And I love what you said earlier about on a whim, because on a whim is so many of my stories start with. So on a whim, I decided. So I think I'm very, I don't know, like quite an instinctive person, but I can tell you two kind of funny stories, and both of which have, in any measure, have worked out really well. So one was getting married. So I've been married for almost 31 years. Excellent decision, I must say. But I remember literally walking, we got married in the Sunken Gardens at UWA, and I remember walking into the Sunken Gardens going, I haven't thought this through at all. I've just gone all in, and I'm actually about to get married, and I don't think I've done a pros and cons list. I've just lobbed on in, and I did exactly the same, and I was literally in labour with my first child. And I remember we'd gone to the hospital, and Tom had dropped me at the door and then had gone to park the car, and I was sitting there going, oh my God, I'm about to have a baby, and I have not consciously decided this. But have 3 children now, and these have been the best decisions of my life. And so and the same with sort of making a big decision a few years ago to leave a job I'd been in sort of almost forever, felt like forever. I didn't agonize over it because I felt it so deeply. And at some points I had thought, oh, did I do the right thing? But it was momentary because I felt it so deeply that it was the right thing to do. But literally yesterday, Kitty Flanagan tickets are on sale. Oh. You should have seen me agonizing over there's 5 dates. What date is going to be the best date? it's June next year. I have nothing on any of those nights. And then trying to work out which seats were going to be the best seats for which night. And neither really matters, but I get caught up on those really little decisions that actually don't matter because I know I'm going to enjoy seeing Kitty Flanagan on whatever night and wherever I'm sitting.
Yeah.
So the
What's
big ones I find easy, but
what's actually going on in our brains, Bethan, when we're making decisions?
Well, I suppose, again, any number of things are happening. I think in the sort of Kitty Flanagan example, like, I feel you, Tim Minchin was a similarly agonizing, where are we going to sit? And there was lots of people involved and lots of options and different dates. There's a lot of that overwhelm with modern decision-making that goes on, where we're just, in analysis paralysis. We can't move forward because there's so many choices and we're giving it more weight than it should have, essentially. Because really, a little diagram I often use in workshops is like asking how reversible is it and how consequential is it? And, having a baby, life and death stuff is the truly irreversible and consequential. Getting married, depending who you speak to, is sometimes more or less irreversible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can be painfully reversible, yeah.
Certainly not when you're walking in, I don't think is the time to...
No, definitely not on the walking in. Though I know some people that were having their doubts even at that moment, planning when it was going to finish.
Yes. Oh, and I should put it up to, didn't really have doubts. It just occurred to me that I hadn't really made a conscious decision. I just kind of not blundered towards it, but kind of
with the flow.
How amazing. Yeah, let's just do it. So, but sorry, go on.
Well, and I suppose there's a lot of social conditioning with stuff like, getting married, having babies that, I know I carried a lot of like the stories of how my parents did it. And I thought those are the ages that you should do things and how it should be done. And then it was only on reflection, the kind of classic midlife crisis is where you go, hang on a minute, how did I end up here? Did I choose this or did I just sort of fall into it because it felt like the next right thing? And that's where critical thinking is so helpful because, if you are starting to question some of those scripts and stories that have been passed on to you, it's useful to just say, is that still true? Is it relevant? Is it logical? Does it apply to me now and the world that we're in today? So when someone's asking, people come to me and they're like, oh, you're good at decision making. Should I do this or this? I go, yes. They're like, no, tell me the answer. Like, both are good. Both will have positive and negative outcomes. But you've got to go with the one that you're kind of most, if it's a personal thing particularly, the one that you're most excited about because you're more likely to make more of a success of that one. And I love using lots of different tools to support people with decision making, but such a simple one is flipping a coin. And you say, not that the coin will make the decision, but you feel about how it lands. Yesterday, I was in a workshop and a lady was like, do I buy the new Thermomix or not? And every logical, rational thing in her body said, this is a bad idea. But emotionally, she'd already bought it. She already was excited about it, even though she had an older one that she barely uses. And I was like, how much is it? She's like, oh, it's just $2,500. And I was like, look, we flipped the coin. And even before I'd done it, she was like, I'll be disappointed if the coin tells me not to.
Right.
So that's a smaller decision, but I've done that with people with like moving house, switching careers. Sometimes our gut has already made that choice for us.
And Kate and I talk about that a lot, I think, gut in decision making. And I talk about it actually with people that I coach. And quite often, particularly if they're lawyers, I had one lawyer say to me, oh no, don't tell me about my gut. I've been trained for 10 years to not listen to my gut. Like, that's not our job when we're making decisions. And I said, well, I just don't agree with that. I feel as though our gut is so useful in giving us a sense of what the decision should be. And I remember I was listening to a podcast actually on decision making once, and there was a woman on there and she said, she was talking about decision making and how to make, I'm going to put it in inverted commas, like good decisions. And she said, don't worry about making a good decision. Worry about making the decision good. Because as you just said, there is, there's positives and negatives to everything. And so the idea that you can make a good decision is ridiculous. What happens is you make a decision and then you should spend all of your energy and time on making sure that you can make that decision work out well. And I think And I just thought, "Oh, that's so true."
Mm.
It's so true, but we get so lost in, "Oh, is this the good one or is that the good one?" Or
Guess too, when you're struggling between two decisions, I guess the presumption there is that they're both okay.
mm,
It's not like saw my own arm off and club myself around the head with it or take this promotion.
Yeah.
mm,
It's because in one, well, it's easy to make a decision in that circumstance. It's when we're struggling, it's kind of like, well, both are okay.
Mm.
mm.
Yeah.
Also, though, I think when you're trying to make a brave decision though, right? Like
Mm,
sometimes, when there's something that you wanna do that feels really brave or courageous because it is a bit different. So it might be, yeah, leaving the career that you're in or, when we decided that we were gonna go and live in France. And all of your rational brain can talk you out of those sort of
mm.
decisions, right? So, Bethan, I'm really interested to hear from you what you think about how gut and rational thinking interact with one another.
Well, there's lots of research around gut instinct. Some people think it's like this woo woo, what's going on in my tummy kind of thing. And
Mm,
that, like that lawyer you were speaking to, like, don't listen to your gut. Like,
Mm,
we just any
mm,
rationality to it. But
mm.
a great book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, where he goes into lots of research around how your gut is actually really, really smart. Like there's a lot of pattern recognition going on that is not conscious. So, if you've been working like this lawyer for 10 years in a particular industry, if you've got a little niggling thought in the back of your mind that something's not quite right, is worth listening to that. And what I
Mm,
observe with people is that we are so noisy, in inverted commas, with consuming lots of information and not switching off and not giving our brains room to breathe, that we don't get the opportunity to tap into that gut instinct. And so a lot of people I speak to overthink things. They get caught in, excuse my I'll explain my hands for the audio
mm,
listeners, like kind of this little whirlpool of thinking going round and round in circles and not really getting anywhere. So a lot of frameworks or decision making kind of questions and tools are about either like expanding that and putting some perspective on it. So, Kitty Flanagan tickets. I don't know what to do. You go, hang on, this is not a big deal. Whatever I choose is a good choice, is going to be fine. Or sometimes going a bit deeper and even something as simple as the 5 whys. You go, okay, why am I thinking about this so much? What's going on? And talking that through with another person, journaling, even sort of back and forth chat with an AI large language model can be really helpful to just dig deeper and go, right, what's actually going on? Typically, there's some kind of fear there if we're struggling to make that choice. Fear of loss, fear of looking stupid, fear of reputational damage. So I always say to people, if you can, like if you're not sure what to do, nibble rather than scoff. Like make that first step more
Oh,
reversible, less
that's a great
consequential.
one.
Yeah.
Nibble
So
rather than scoff. I love that.
yeah, it's a big chocolate cake. Life is a big chocolate cake, but just nibble. You can nibble fast. And as you know, when you have a career change, you just got to be like, okay, I'm just going to go for this coffee. I'm going to talk to that person. I'm going to reach out to that potential mentor. I'm going to contact someone else about being a client. And you
yeah.
just keep experimenting and trying. To your point, Shayla, make that decision work. It's up to you. Anyone can have a career change and go, oh, well, that was crap, and probably go back. Like a lot of us can go back to whatever the thing was we did before if we've got enough experience and we haven't burnt our bridges. So I think that relationships is really important in that regard. But yeah, nibble rather than scoff is what I say to people all the time.
That's a good one. And
Mm,
we do book reviews on our podcast, and we did the book Tiny Experiments by Anne-Laure Lecunff. She makes that same point, about tiny experiments. And I think it's so true, isn't it? It's
mm,
just try little things.
mm,
They're so illuminating often. They give you so much information. And I think often the problem is, and particularly with professionals, is that we think we have to get everything right on the first go. And
mhm,
if something doesn't feel right, which takes me back to my first question, I suppose, around like what is a good decision? It's
mm,
so it's so personal.
Yeah.
What is a good decision? Like Kate might have chosen Tuesday night to go and see Kitty Flanagan, and that was a good decision for her. But actually, Friday night might have been better for me or whatever. It, you know, it's really hard. I wonder how hard you find it to teach people about decision making when in fact it's so subjective?
I suppose to that point, the thing that I come back to often with people is around permission. And if it's in the workplace, so a lot of the training I do is in sort of big corporate environments, there's often a lack of clarity on who is supposed to make the decision or who would the team leader like to make this decision, all of that. But on a personal level as well, permission, sometimes we need to allow ourselves to make those choices. Sometimes we are almost unconsciously waiting for validation or someone to grant that permission to us. So I'll give you a very silly example, but for years I didn't get a tattoo because I kind of always wanted one as a kid, and my parents would always be like, no, 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 tattoos are bad. You've got to wait till you leave the house, whatever. And it was
Mm.
still in the back of my mind. And then my younger brother, I noticed a tattoo one Christmas when we were in our 20s on his wrist under a watch band. And I was like, oh, has mum seen that? And he was like, why does it matter if mum's seen it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's just you've been naughty. You broke the rule. So I got my first tattoo when I was, I don't know, 34 or something, because I didn't have permission in the back of my mind.
Mm.
It's insane and ridiculous. But, a lot of people, particularly in professional careers, you're like, why are you in this job? And it's because mum or dad or granny or grandma or whatever said at some point, this is a good job to have. I
Mm.
went into teaching partially because my mum said it's a good career if you
Mm.
want to have children one day.
I just think that's so true. And actually, I do coaching with people, and I've just not long ago designed a package for people, and I've actually called it the permission slip,
Love that.
because I feel as though people often, when they come to you for coaching, deep down, they actually know what they want to do. And they're kind of just coming along because actually they want someone to go, yes, that's
Idea.
fine that you do that, and it's really, a few people have said to me, "Oh my goodness, that name is so great." So yeah, I'll give you the permission slip. And I think people need a bit of hand holding and need to know that someone else is giving the permission slip until they feel empowered enough to kind of carry it for themselves. But it's a real journey for people.
Mm.
Yeah,
You think
definitely.
that's where most of it comes from, Bethan? The sort of, because we've talked before, haven't we, Shayla, about the internalized messages that we
Mm.
pick up. Do you think most of it comes from that sort of family of origin or society at large or both?
Lots of things. I do enjoy sitting down with an individual or sometimes talking with a group about the kind of Venn diagram that creates who we are. And so every, family of origin story, every experience that we've had, everything about our cultural background, our language, everything goes into how we interpret things in any given moment. And once you start to unpick some of that, you're like, whoa, that's really interesting. Even
Mm.
just you might say a certain sentence and someone goes, oh, I don't like that. My granddad used to say that when I was in trouble or so, oh,
Yeah.
wow, okay. If people come to a workshop and it's Daniel and I say, oh, hi, Daniel, nice to meet you. And he's like, oh, don't call me that. That's what my mum says when I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan is
Right.
then or Danny or whatever. So we all have these, just little micro triggers going on all the time as to how we interpret the world. And that will be feeding into what's right for us, obviously. And sometimes it's interesting to question, is it actually right for you, or is it just what you're telling yourself? And, if somebody doesn't want to go for promotion and they're like, oh, no, it's because they don't want to be in leadership. And it's like, okay, cool. If that's fine and that's, you're happy with that, but is that actually what's going on? Or is it you don't believe you're capable of that leadership role? And
Mm.
where's that coming from and what's that story? So when we go through a decision-making framework, I have this point framework that's really helpful in lots of contexts. So we have P for permission, and then we zoom out and we say, like, what's the bigger picture? What's the long term? Or if it's, like a work thing, what's the major strategic goal we're working towards? Zoom in and you look at the data, what's the metric that really matters here? So if it's like a work thing, it's like, is it most important for you that you have a good salary, that you love your colleagues, that you, I don't know, have a short commute? Everybody's
Mm.
different. Um, and then the N is about the noise. So what's the things that are clouding your judgment, whether that's internally or externally? What's kind of the biases or the squeaky wheels or the assumptions that you might be making? And then the T is for test. So, like nibble rather than scoff. Take action, but in a way that's just like a tiny experiment, I guess, like you were saying before. It just gives people a bit of a step by step, because a pros and cons list is a kind of go-to, but
Mm.
it's very easy to go, pros are great, fantastic, all these good stuff. Cons are, I don't know, I might die. And you go, oh, well, there's only one thing on the cons list. That one kind of outweighs the others. So then you get into like judgment and balancing act that can be impossible to really get an answer from.
Do you think that the decision making for a work related decision is any different from the system or the process that you go through for a personal decision?
I guess a personal one, it's much easier to own any consequences and for you to just go, do you know what? I made that choice. I did a great thing or I screwed up and I have to live with the consequences. The work thing, particularly in large organizations, but actually any size organization, there's more people that are impacted by it. And that can be hard. Listening to a very senior engineer recently talking about expanding into a new country, buying a business and it being amazing initially and it seeming like a great choice. But then after 3 or 4 years, it didn't work out. They had to let everyone go and they had to roll that all back. So you could tell even when he was speaking about that, that still weighs heavily on him and probably always will because of the number of people impacted. The fact that people lost their jobs, etc., might seem like a bad thing initially, but maybe for those people as individuals, it was great. Maybe they liked the job anyway. Maybe they got a better one. So we never know the secondary outcomes for
Yes.
other people, but they can definitely weigh more heavily on us. But yeah, we can use similar structures,
Yeah.
but the way that we own that and the outcomes will be very, very different.
And I think the other thing, I mean, we kind of bash ourselves up when things go wrong and we go, I should have known that. I shouldn't have done that. I should have figured that out from other things that I'd done or whatever. But the reality is that we can also never know what might have happened if we had have done the other thing,
Mm,
right? And so it's actually just a waste of time
Mm.
in the sense that, well, yeah, maybe the other thing would have worked out even worse. And so I'm really
mm.
interested if you've got advice for people like that who find it really difficult. They make a decision, they really agonize over making a decision, and then perhaps it doesn't work out in the way that they thought. What would you sort of say to those people?
I suppose a useful tool is what's called an after action review, where you just say, what was meant to happen? What actually happened? Why was there a difference? And it helps turn something where you're blaming yourself or blaming other people into let's be objective and neutral about this and try and look at it from an outsider's perspective. Because when it's you in the moment thinking about, how you screwed up, you're going to be very emotional. You're too close to see, is it actually that bad? And
Mm.
I've been there. Like there was a workshop last year. I was like, oh my God, that was horrible. Like it went really badly. And I just needed a friend to kind of bat that back. And she's like, sounds like it was okay.
Yeah.
Have they said it went badly? And I'm like, no, they haven't actually. This is all in my head because it didn't go as I wanted it to.
Mm,
So checking in on that expectation versus reality. And then look and seeing, when you know better, do better. But at least if you've got some notes or a process or you had a conversation with someone in making that decision, you know that you gave it your best shot in thinking it through beforehand. Because
Mm.
sometimes we don't know all the information when we're having to make a decision
Mm.
and being kind and saying, at the time I made that choice
Right.
because of XYZ.
Mm.
mm.
Now I know it wasn't. But again, did you give it your best shot? Did you make it the best it could be? So that's just asking yourself some of those reflection questions and giving a bit of distance is very, very helpful.
Yeah. You talked a little bit earlier about how we don't give ourselves enough space often, or our life is just kind of so busy and we just don't have time really to maybe reflect on decisions as deeply as we should. And I mean, the world asks for that too, doesn't it? The world moves fast now.
Mm.
Back when I
Quote
started
from Ferris
practicing.
Bueller's Day Off, Shayla.
Yes.
Life moves pretty fast.
Moves pretty fast. When I
Yeah.
started practicing law, we didn't have email really. Like there was like one email that kind of came into the whole business and that was it. So,
Mm.
letters used to take weeks and weeks. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just way slower. Whereas
Mm.
now the world just fast, fast, fast all of the time. There's constant noise that's going on.
Mm.
What do you suggest to people about how they how they can find space in that kind of world.
A lot of it is personal choice
Mm.
around that, because typically, if you're in a professional career, you're also perhaps with other responsibilities, family, pets, children, whatever that looks like for you. And also trying to keep up with, social stuff and wanting to do fun things and all of that. So when we add into that mix as well, like the noise from our phones, I think that can create a sense of busy that is not actually there. So I often say to people at the start of a session, let's check in on what's actually important, and then check, where do we spend our time? Where do we spend our money? Pull up your internet banking, pull up your screen time, and people go, oh, no, no, no. Don't want to face that reality. Um, it's, I'm not saying that's true of everyone, but we can kind of create a lot of headspace just by disconnecting a bit.
Mm.
It's big on that. But yeah, we are in an era where people's expectations are high and we need to manage those. So having those conversations and saying, look, I know you might like it if you email, then you want a reply within an hour. But for me, like yesterday, I was facilitating all day, and I'm like,
Mm.
sometimes you putting on your out of office and saying, I'm
Mm.
not going to reply today, or just, it's on us often. We have more control than we think we do in terms of pushing back those boundaries and setting expectations about what's
Mm.
realistic and asking for what we need. And interestingly, I say to people often in workshops, the feeling that we need to make a decision, we're under pressure, is very often there. But if you say, do you know what, that's a really important decision and I want to think about that a little bit longer, give it the proper attention it needs. Can I get back to you tomorrow and let you know? I go, how would you respond if someone said that to you? And they go, oh, well, I'd respect that. That's quite a sensible thing to say. And I'm like, cool,
Mm.
permission slip for you to say it yourself. Create that time, push
Mm.
back, and then find the way that works for you to have some reflection, like just micro moments. I find just getting away from screens, going for a little walk, going to the loo, when I'm in the shower, when I'm driving, those places where your sort of hands are busy, so you're not
Mm.
on a phone and your brain is not fully engaged in the task. It gives your default mode network a chance to connect some dots and just ideas to bubble up that
Mm.
you
Mm.
have when someone's saying, think of a good idea.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's actually often when the best things come, isn't it? And I think, am I
Always.
right in thinking there's a brainwave state that you're in a beta? Is that right?
I
I
don't
don't know
know.
if I'm making that up, but that when it's almost like a semi-meditative state. You're when you're actively engaged, there's a certain brainwave, and then like when you're in the shower or driving or whatever, you are sort of paying attention, but your brain has sort of slowed down a bit. But that's certainly driving or in the shower or something like that. That's absolutely when ideas
Mm.
will hit for me. That's
But
some of my best work. In fact, one of my friends who was used to have like those kids' crayons in the shower.
Ah,
yeah,
And
yeah.
because she said that actually, this was when she was writing a thesis, actually, and she would say that the best ideas came. So she kept kids' crayons in the shower so she could write them down when they
Mm.
popped up. And I thought that's such a genius.
crayons.
I,
I advocate for like capturing your genius. So have your little routine around, okay, I'm going to be in this position in the shower, in the car.
mm,
What do I need to think about right now? Because
mm,
your brain will think about something, so you
mm,
might as well make it something useful.
mm.
And then how are you going to capture your genius? So I have whiteboard markers in the bathroom, and I'm always writing things on the mirror.
Yeah, right.
And if I'm driving, which is another place for me that's quite it's part of routine. It's easy to do. Sometimes I'll have like a dictation app open, or people
Right.
will be, hey Siri, email me this. So having a way that's ideally not your phone to capture the ideas that you're having, so that they don't just, you go,
Yeah.
I had a really good idea. What was that? Yeah.
Because there's not actually that many moments in life anymore where we're not doing something, is it? Like
Well,
shower is, very difficult to do anything else in the shower other than shower. And I've heard that so much, Kate. People go, oh, that's my shower idea this morning. It's a real kind of way of describing
right.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
process. And I think driving, I mean, obviously everyone should listen to this podcast while they're driving, but also sometimes it's very nice to just drive without
Mm.
anything on. And that seems like a crazy idea, right? When you say that, like the idea that you would just sit there and not have music on or not have any noise on. But actually, that's a really, I think, almost sacred time to do it. But aside from that, you don't. You
No.
might get on public transport, you get on your phone, don't you? Like, how many people do you ever kind of see sitting there doing nothing? And I think I've given this example before on the podcast when I get up at 5 and try and sit from 5 till 6 with my cup of coffee, looking out the window without doing anything. That's when I find all of my creative ideas come to me. But it's super uncomfortable and you feel like you should be doing something in inverted commas rather than just sitting and, again, in inverted commas, doing nothing.
Yeah. And I think this is where knowing your routines, what's going to fit for you, because it's all very well saying, book an hour's meeting with yourself.
Yeah.
Lots of people struggle to maintain the boundary on that.
Mm.
So making it harder to, well, it's as with everything, right? Making it as frictionless as possible to do the thing you want to do. So in the book, I describe it as like smart me and stupid me. Smart me knows that having time to think is really, really important from a strategic perspective. Stupid me goes, oh, look, let's see if there's any notifications or
That is
even, yeah.
that is such a great way to think of it, though. Too, you're coming up with some great things that are landing. I must say they're really landing for me, Bethan. Smart me and stupid me. That's because that's the struggle within all of us, isn't it? A bit that we know what is going to benefit us, but still sometimes. And I think there's certainly room to sometimes go, you know what? I'm going to actually let stupid me take control because why not? But often within the day, there are small things you can do and think, you know what, I know if I have that third cup of coffee, I'm going to get jittery. So actually, why don't I just have a peppermint tea instead or something like that? Even though I really am feeling like the coffee would be nice, but that's such a great way to think of it. It's smart and stupid. Yeah.
Well, and so, to that point, I loved recently, I saw Diet Cokes referred to as fridge cigarettes because back in the day when people smoked more, you'd go out and have a smoke and that would give you that opportunity to step away,
Right.
chat to someone random,
Right.
have some thoughts. So if I have a fridge right there. So if I'm working from home, I can just go get something, come back, or I have it in and I can go to the shop. Sure, it might cost me an extra, I don't know, 50 cents to go to a shop, right? But the walk on the way is such a good little reset. So while we might focus a lot on morning routines, I know from my observations and anecdotally, a lot of us might be organized in the morning and have a bit of like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then as the day goes on, our focus wanes, our motivation to do the hard things wanes. So we don't have that lunch break and a reset then to go, okay, what am I actually doing? Is it the right thing? Is it moving me in the direction I want to be going? Or am I just spuddling, which is a great old English word. Like I'm busy, but I'm not really achieving anything.
Yeah.
That's often where people get by mid-afternoon. If there's not some kind of, a meeting or a circuit breaker or something in there to have that check-in.
I haven't read your book, and maybe we should do it for Outlawberry,
I
and
think we
then you
should.
could,
Cool.
But I love the concept of smart me and stupid me. But
Fantastic.
what I'm interested in digging down into that a bit more is, again, going back to these sort of big, brave decisions. So again, when we decided that we would go and live in France for a year, it felt like the stupid me was going, we should definitely go and live in France. That sounds like a great idea. And the smart me was going, what are you actually talking about? And so I'm interested in how you kind of expand that idea. I can see it's really useful like during the day and those kind of smaller decisions, but I wonder how it applies in kind of bigger decisions where actually your gut voice is maybe a bit louder, and your gut voice is often the voice that's interpreted as the stupid one.
Great
Yeah.
question, Taylor.
Yeah. I mean, there's no right answer to this. And I see what you're saying that like, a sensible, rational choice. And this is where knowing, like the coin flip thing, what's my gut feel actually saying? And
Yeah.
I suppose questions like, in 10 years time, if I don't do this, how am I going to feel about it?
Yeah.
The bigger picture, zoom out, what aligns with my values, the kind of person that I want to be. And I love that you just went, screw it, let's go.
Yeah.
And our
Yeah.
mutual friend, Megan, I think did similar. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Why not? And if you
Yeah.
don't have a good reason, why not? And it comes down to values often as well. Just last night,
Mm.
I was watching a podcast. There was a man talking about paying off his mortgage quickly, even though it was on
Mhm.
a very good interest rate. And he said, look, on paper, it was a bad decision because I could have invested that money. I could have made more money, whatever. But he was saying, for me personally, my personality type, the way that I feel about like needing security, and because he's in quite a kind of volatile, up and down kind of work area, is like the way that I felt. Like he said, he cried when he paid off his mortgage
Yeah.
because it just felt so good to have that knowledge and security, even something that, in some ways you might be like, oh, that's very sensible and rational. But he was like, no, it wasn't sensible. And it was just emotionally, this is what I need. Whereas for
Mm.
someone else, that risk and the kind of adventure of what else, how much more money could I make
Mm.
with this cash that I haven't paid off my mortgage would be much more fun and interesting. And it
Sounds
just
like
comes
Yeah.
to values.
values keep creeping into things, doesn't like Shayla, we've talked about this before and we've done a lot of talking about values and so much of decision making, I guess, depends on actually what is it that we really prioritize. So it's
Mm.
hard to make a good decision or it's hard to know what sort of decision is going to most likely work for you without really knowing what's important to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it
Yeah.
is, isn't it? Security is important, but more important to some people than adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Definitely.
like
Yeah.
is I often quote, I think it's Tony Robbins, all decision making is a values clarifying exercise. Like
Mm.
you don't necessarily realize that, but
Mm.
we're all here today because we decided at some point this was an important thing to do. This is what we want to
Mm.
spend our time on. And to the point of like values, personal, professional, whatever, taking time to think about them is so useful because to quote Annie Duke, who's a decision-making strategist, she says the worst time to make a decision is when you're facing one down. You're like, but Annie, when am I supposed to make my decisions?
Mm.
It's like as much as possible, thinking about it in advance. So when you get to those moments of like, do I? Do I pull the plug? Do I say yes to this big thing? If adventure and pleasure in life is something that's important to you, then you know that that's like, hell yeah, I'm going to go and do that
Yeah.
thing. Whereas if it doesn't feel quite right, I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is listening to the no's as well. Like someone
Mm.
saying, I don't know, this doesn't, I had to say this morning to covering someone else's workshop next year on a topic that I could do, but it's not quite what I do. And I was like, do you know what? I had a convenient no because it was on a date that I already had something booked. And then
Yeah.
they said, oh, could you do a different day? And I'm like, oh, damn, now I have to
Yeah.
actually.
Now I actually have to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. But it's always a work in progress, right? I say
Yeah.
protect the seeds, stop the weeds. There's always going to be things that need to be pulled out and sort of, cleansed from your calendar or your system or whatever, and
Mm.
to focus on the good stuff and give that
Mm.
the space it needs to grow.
Yeah. That's great. This has been so great, Bethan. Thank you so much
So
for
interesting.
coming on. I could talk about this for like all day, really.
Yeah,
Me
I want
too.
to hear
And
more of the stories.
but I definitely would like to. So much of what you've said has resonated so deeply.
Mm.
I definitely would like to get your book, and I think that could be a really interesting outlawry book. So perhaps that's something
Mm.
we could talk to you about again. But just
Awesome.
before we leave, I always love to ask, and I know you've talked about a lot actually, and I think it's pretty clear you've given people listening some great ideas and a great framework. But if you had to give someone one piece of advice, your 25 words or less, how do I make better decisions, Bethan? What would it be? What would you tell people to prioritize?
I would love to see more people having confidence in their own decisions. So I think to do that, give yourself the space, your brain, the room to breathe, and
Mm.
find a way to nibble rather than scoff. If you're not sure, like I like the phrase action is the antidote to anxiety. So
Mm,
like a little nibble, something next step, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I
yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
what people struggle with.
Mm,
So
Yeah.
someone who's done it already and get their lowdown. But don't
mm.
necessarily listen to them.
Right.
Mm.
Well, because sometimes people have their own sort of not necessarily a conscious agenda, but I always used to think too, and I've often said this to my children: when people are giving you advice, often they're actually giving advice to themselves.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, which is a very human and natural thing to do, but it just means you've sort of got to take everything people suggest with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
because no one, like you say, slow down enough to really listen to and trust yourself, trust your decisions. Yeah, that's such a great note to end on.
Well, thank you so much again. It's been a real pleasure, and maybe we'll welcome you back for Outlaw Brewery one day.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
that. That's great. Thanks for having me on. It's been
Thank you
super
so
fun.
much.
Thank you so
So
much.
wonderful. I've loved this.
So that was great, wasn't it?
I loved it. I really loved it. I found so much of what Bethan said so resonated. No, I'm dying to read her book, actually.
Yeah.
So what I loved is that the more we do this and the more guests we have on, don't you start to see this, not that the same themes keep emerging, and one of the big ones is values,
Yeah.
that actually so much of it comes down to knowing what our values are, because how can we really make a decision when we don't know what they are? And I thought Beth Ann's example of the guy who paid off his mortgage, and he's like, well, the interest rates, I could have made more doing this, but security is really important to me. For
Yeah.
someone else, I don't know, prosperity or the
Adventure.
adventure that I can
Yeah.
have with this money rather than sort of put it into my mortgage is more important to me. So,
Yeah.
and both equally valid decisions, but it's just unique to the individual as to what matters to them. I also love how we often come back to the parable of the farmer who's and the horse and the sun, and we've talked about that once before. And I know I've said this before, the Dalai Lama's quote, sometimes not getting what you want is a marvelous stroke of luck. And I think that's really good to know too, because decisions can be difficult. We know now there's no astrological link, reassuring. But I
Thank
knew that the
goodness.
minute I met you, because you're a Libran too and you don't have any problems with it.
Sometimes I do, but I think that was interesting. Your reflection on sometimes you can make quite big decisions quite easily, but then smaller decisions. And
Yeah.
I think what's important out of all this is this idea that some people are good decision makers and some people are bad decision makers. Actually, I just think that's a construct.
Mm,
Because as she says, a fast decision might not be a good decision and a slow decision might be a bad decision. And so this idea that there's sort of good decision
yeah.
makers, or I think everyone just has to find their own vibe. And I
Mm,
think some of the tools that she suggested were really useful. I think actually what a good decision maker is someone who's maybe confident in the process that they go through when
yeah.
they make a decision, which was what she was saying. Just be
Yeah,
confident in your decision.
that's true. And actually, I think for me, when I was giving that example of two of the biggest decisions you can make, for me, when I was giving that example of two of the biggest decisions you can make, to who to marry
Mm.
and whether to have a baby or not, but they have been the best decisions of my life.
So thanks for listening today, Outlaws. That was a great conversation. Hopefully you've got as much out of it as Kate and I have. And as usual, let us know in all of the usual channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or send us an email. Thanks for joining us. Thanks,
Thank you
Kate.
so much. Thank you, Beth Ann. That was great.
Yeah, it was. Bye.
Bye.